Hand cutting dovetails is a super cool skill, but if you have to cut a lot of dovetails the same size, hand cutting is not so cool anymore. So today I'm going to show you a method how you cut dovetails on the table saw super fast. With this super simple jig, you just attach it to your miter gauge and off you go. So let's build the jig. I start by ripping a 20 cm strip off a Baltic birch plywood sheet. This is going to be the back of the jig. And also a couple of 5 cm strips. I mark a 8 by 5 cm rectangle in the center of the board. I route 6 mm deep so I can insert a 6 mm MDF piece later on. The chisel takes care of the rest. In order to insert a T-track into the back of the jig, I set up my router exactly to the height of the T-track. You only have to route a little bit further than the center because you only need a T-track on one side of the blade. And once again, the chisel to square it up. After I've marked the length, I cut the T-track. First slow and careful, and then going absolutely wild with my dull saw blade. I really have to get a new one. Then it's time to countersink the T-track and screw it in place. I screw one of the 5 cm strips to the back of the jig, so it really stays flat over time. The strip for the base also has the recess for the MDF plate. I mark the location of the pins of my miter gauge. And mark the location for the threaded inserts. Now I screw the base plate to the jig and really make sure it's 90 degrees. After that, I can attach the jig to the miter gauge. The next step is to cut 6 mm MDF to the size of the recess. and screwing it in place. For the T-track stop, I just took a piece of scrap and drilled 2 holes for the star knobs. Works like a charm. Okay, the jig is done. Now let's cut some dovetails. I mark my 2 outside faces and label the pin and the tailboard. I set my marking gauge to the thickness of the wood. On the tailboard, I mark all 4 sides with a marking gauge. Whereas on the pinboard, I only mark the 2 faces. Then I lay out my dovetails as usual. You only have to lay it out on the face of the board. If you cut dovetails on multiple boards with the same width, you only have to make the layout once, and the stop box takes care of the rest. And of course, I mark my waist. Now I set my bevel gauge to the dovetail angle. For the saw blade, I take a flat top grind blade, because then I have to chisel less, especially later on for the pins. If you want to chisel even less on the tails, then you can buy a saw blade grind to your dovetail angle. With the bevel gauge, I can tilt my blade to the correct angle. With a piece of scrap, I dial in the height of the blade. On the tailboard, you want to go as close to the line as possible. With the saw blade in the right height, I can now set up my stop block for the first cut. Whoops, hit the tripod with the sliding table. Now just flip your piece and make the second cut. Note you can only do this on the tailboard, not on the pinboard. Now slide over the stop for the next cut. Make the cut. And flip the board again for the next cut. With the chisel, you can clean it up once again. I like to use a Japanese pull saw to get rid of the waste at the ends. Looks pretty fresh, huh? With the plane as an aid, you can align the boards. Pro tip, holding a pencil in your mouth really makes this process easier. It doesn't really matter if you take a pencil or a knife, I just found it's easier to take a knife to get into the small pins. Then I have to transfer the lines to the face, since only the face is visible when aligning the board for the cut. With the blade tilted to 90 degrees again, I can now take the bevel gauge and align my jig for the first pins. Now once again I dial in the height with a scrap piece. Now I really want to hit my line because I don't want to chisel. Now I can make all cuts on the left side of the pins. Remember, don't flip the board. In order to cut on the other side of the pins, I set up my miter gauge to the other side. After the cuts, I nibble away the rest of the waste. And then it's time for a test fit. This one came together perfectly. I was really surprised how good it came together on the first try. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please take a second and hit that subscribe button down there, so you won't miss another video. Next time we will fine tune the miter saw and improve the dust collection on it, so see you next time.